So the next bit, I'm going to wet the background area. So we're going to do a wetting wet in the background. So your first job is to neatly go round the flower area completely. Just take a bit of time doing this. It's a bit like the Forth Bridge used to be, in that you get to the beginning and you need to check the start where you started hasn't dried out in the meantime. They don't use paint like that now, so I can't use that as my example. Going over where those stems are, which we left as stopping points on the first video, but we can actually go over them this time. And just bend your head down and just check that that is neatly done, and you can spend time just making sure that it is left neatly wet. So it wants to be nicely wet all the way around. And then I've made up some sap green and some sap green with ultramarine. So some of the paint will be left the colour that we started, and some of it will be made darker. So I'm just sort of darkening over this side. There's some dark around here. We want to leave, it's important that you leave some of the pale tone that you had at the beginning, so don't destroy it completely. I'm going to have some excess going on at the top, but I'll sort that in a minute. This area is quite dark, so I'm getting sort of an unclear, unformed background, and then I'm going to put some of the dark tone in. So there's some dark tone over this side, and you can always do this more than once. This is probably not as dark as it might be, but it just gives you the feel of something and nothing going on. I'm just going to make up a little, so long as that's nice and wet, I've got time just to make a slightly darker mix of this dark green, and I can just put this in. And this dark is going to help the pale of the flower stand out. So there's some up here. This is dark. I've gone slightly over my petal, but I can do something about that in a moment. So I'm not getting rid of that pale tone completely, I'm just getting a sort of blotchy feel to the background. I can see I've got a dry bit there. You may find that you need to go into a smaller brush for the twiddly bits. So I just need to take that neater, but you could have been neater at the start. And then where you've got your excess, dab your brush off on tissue. Oh, sorry, just bashed the camera. Dab your brush off on tissue and run it in. There's a slight excess in here. Very gently when you're in the middle of a picture. Just take it off, and there's an excess at the bottom. So dab on tissue, don't squeeze your brush out. That will take all your paint off. And you can see you've got this sort of blotchy background. And the colour also, that sap green, has run over where those stems are. So the stems have now got some colour on. And I've just gone over my flower doing that. So remember, if you're lifting paint, squeeze your brush out, and that will lift all the paint out. So I can just neaten up any edges where I've overrun if it's still wet enough. That's not too bad, actually. It's not perfect there, but that will do. And that gives like an out of focus, blurry background. And I can do that as many times as I want. So it's better, especially if it starts to dry. If you find that certain areas are beginning to dry, stop. Let the whole lot dry, and then re-wet everything and carry on putting paint on. Never keep going when areas start to dry, otherwise you will end up with watermarks. So that's your test, and you can see how that dark tone now is beginning to bring those blossom flowers out really nicely. And that's your next bit.